Almighty God, we the representatives of the citizens of the City of Brisbane are assembled here to strive and care for the welfare of our city and all its people. Lord, we ask that you guide us in the decisions we make today. Amen. Amen. Brisbane City Council acknowledges this country and its traditional custodians. We acknowledge and respect the spiritual relationship between traditional custodians and this country, which has inspired language, songs, dances, law and dreaming stories over many thousands of years. We pay our respects to the elders, those who have passed into the dreaming, those here today, those of tomorrow. May we continue to peacefully walk together in gratitude, respect and kindness, in caring for this country and one another. Please be seated. I declare the meeting open. Councillors, are there any apologies? Councillor Dixon.
Chair, I advise that Councillor Stephen Huang will be absent today, and I move that he be granted a leave of absence from the meeting.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Dixon and seconded by Councillor Givney that Councillor Huang be granted a leave of absence from today's meeting. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Are there any further apologies? Councillor Cassidy.
I move that Councillor Griffiths be granted a leave of absence from this meeting.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Cassidy and seconded by Councillor Collier that Councillor Griffiths be granted a leave of absence from today's meeting. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Councillors, I draw your attention to the notice of motion at item 2 on the agenda. Lord Mayor, would you please move the motion?
Madam Chair, I move that Council resolves to number 1, adopt the investment policy at attachment A for the 24-25 financial year, the debt policy at attachment B for the 24-25 financial year, the pensioners' partial rebate of rates and charges policy at attachment C for the 24-25 financial year, the not-for-profit organisation's partial rebate of general rates policy at attachment D for the 24-25 financial year, payment of overdue rates and charges policy at attachment E for the 24-25 financial year, the not-for-profit kindergarten's partial rebate of rates and charges at attachment F for the 24-25 financial year, the infrastructure charges debt management policy at attachment G for the 24-25 financial year, Brisbane infrastructure charges resolution number 13, 2024 at attachment H with effect on and from the 1st of July 2024, the not-for-profit affordable housing providers partial rebate of general rates policy at attachment I for the 24-25 financial year, and 2, that we amend AP 290 Brisbane Housing Supply Incentive Policy adopted on the 24th of October 2023 by Council Resolution 235-2023-24 as set out in attachment J with retrospective effect to 24th of October 2023. Number 3, that we approve the Stores Board submission, amendment to the significant contracting plans and a sole source submission as set out in attachment K, and approve the Stores Board submission, number 4, significant contracting plan for recyclable materials recovery services as set out at attachment L, and approve the amendment to the administrative arrangements as set out in attachment M, and delegate certain powers of council specified in column 1 of the table of delegations of power to the delegates listed in column 2, subject to any limits or special conditions listed in column 3, and on the general conditions of delegations as set out on attachment N.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by Councillor Cunningham that Council resolves to 1, adopt the investment policy at attachment A for the 2024-25 financial year, debt policy at attachment B for the 2024-25 financial year, pensioners' partial rebate of rates and charges policy at attachment C for the 2024-25 financial year, not-for-profit organisations partial rebate for general rates policy at attachment D for the 2024-25 financial year, payment of the overdue rates and charges policy at attachment E for the 2024-25 financial year, not-for-profit kindergartens partial rebate of rates and charges policy at attachment F for the 2024-25 financial year, Infrastructure charges debt management policy at attachment G for the 2024-25 financial year. Brisbane infrastructure charges resolution number 13, 2024 at attachment H with effect on and from 1 July 2024. Not-for-profit affordable housing providers partial rebate of general rates policy at attachment I for the 2024-25 financial year. And 2, amend the AP 290 Brisbane Housing Supply Incentive Policy adopted on the 24th of October 2023 by Council Resolution 235/2023-24 as set out in attachment J with retrospective effect to 24 October 2023. 3, approve the Stores Board submission amendment to significant contracting plans and a sole source submission as set out in attachment K. 4, approve the Stores Board submission significant contracting plan for recyclable materials recovery services as set out in attachment L. 5, approve the amendment to administrative arrangements as set out in attachment M. And 6, delegate certain powers of council specified in column 1 of the table of delegations of power to the delegates listed in column 2, subject to any limits or special conditions listed in column 3, and on the general conditions of delegations as set out in attachment N. Lord Mayor, is there any debate?
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I ask that items 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 are taken seriatim for debate purposes.
2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Thank you, Councillor Johnston. For debate. So, item 1. Lord Mayor, item 1.
Okay. Madam Chair, the matters on item 1, which are various policies that come through each year, I assume will be largely non-controversial, but I'll just say a few things briefly because I understand there's other items that councillors want to talk about. I'll particularly just mention the item B, the debt policy, briefly. I'm going to find the right notes. So this debt policy is required under the City of Brisbane Regulation 2012. It states the new borrowings plan for 2024-25 financial year and the next 9 financial years as well. Sets out the principles that are used by Council to borrow for funding purposes. I can confirm that borrowings over the 4-year budget period have remained unchanged compared to the previous budget estimates. However, timing of the borrowings have changed. And so the overall borrowings over that period of time, 4 years, are unchanged, but there's a timing switch between different financial years. 2024-25 borrowings have increased, but future years' borrowings have decreased. Additionally, QTC borrowings over the 10-year budget period have substantially decreased by $219 million, resulting in an approved debt per capita position over the 10-year period of $1,206 per person compared to $1,631 per person. In terms of other items here that I just wanted to mention briefly, okay, no, I don't have anything further to say on those item 1 issues. As I said, they're all relatively non-controversial things that we do each year, and none of them should be a surprise to any councillor.
Thank you. Further speakers on item 1. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. Can I ask that item B, 1B, be taken seriatim for voting, please? 1B, yeah. look, we'll be supporting all of these items except for B, because what we have seen, and I understand a debt policy is required, I just don't support the LNP's debt policy that they're bringing forward today, because we've seen the results of that. $3.1 million a week now in interest payments alone, eating into council's ongoing abilities to deliver services. Now, I know the LNP have a position around service delivery versus inner city infrastructure. They've made that extremely clear, not just in this budget, but in recent weeks. So clear that the Lord Mayor has literally said that. That his preference is spending money on infrastructure in the inner city than delivering services in the suburbs of Brisbane, and that obviously now extends to suburban infrastructure as well, of what a lot of people consider to be council services, like their community sporting clubs and libraries and environment centres and things like that. So we certainly don't support the approach of this LNP administration when it comes to managing debt. I'll have a bit more to say in the second lot, or 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, so I'll just leave it there for this section.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Hutton on item
Thank you, Chair.
1.
I rise to speak on item 1L, which is a significant contract for recyclable materials recovery services. Our administration has proudly overseen the recycling
Point
of
of
over...
order.
Point of...
Oh, apologies.
sorry. Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Point of order, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Seriatim.
And can I just clarify, just before we go further, with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you wanted them separate to item 1, or are you wanting them all separately? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 together. Yeah, just checking. Just for Seriatim. Yep. Thank you. Yep. Sorry. Yes. Thank you for debate. Any further speakers? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. I rise to speak on item 1, which is the adoption of the policies for the year, and I too will not be supporting Council's debt policy, and the Lord Mayor's and Councillor Cunningham's earlier explanation about debt are quite astonishing. This council has got itself into an extraordinary position where debt is increasing. Interest is exponentially increasing, taking away from the funds that are available to deliver services, and we are dipping into the emergency overdraft just to keep things running. Now, the debt policy that we're being asked to approve for 2024-25 does the following. This year, it says that Council is planning to borrow $475 million. Last year, at the same time we had this debate, Council told this, the Lord Mayor told this Council that Council planned to borrow $275 million in this financial year. In fact, we're now borrowing $200 million more than what we said last year. Now, Councillor Cunningham stood up only a few minutes ago and said this Council is delaying borrowings. So I'm not sure what her meaning of delay means, but when you increase your borrowing, when you increase your borrowings exponentially on what you said you were going to do last year to this year, that's not a delay, that's actually an increase. But it's even better. If you go back another year, so you go back to 2022, just 2 years ago, this administration said in 2024-25 that it would actually only borrow $190 million. So that is an exponential increase, almost $300 million more Council is planning to borrow this year than they said 2 years ago. Now, the big question is why? We know why. Because the Lord Mayor's signature projects, including the Metro, including the Green Bridge, including Moggle Road, have all blown out in costs, and they are costing ratepayers to the tune of hundreds of millions of more in debt and borrowings, and millions more every week in interest payments, which adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars in extra interest. So when this Lord Mayor says, we're only borrowing the same amount, well, not based on what we've been forecasting as a council. And when Councillor Cunningham says, oh, but we're delaying our borrowing, she actually means they're increasing. Now, Councillor Massey earlier today said something in her speech on the budget as a whole that was quite interesting, which is you can't trust the Lord Mayor. Now, I haven't said this myself for a very long time because all trust has been broken. But this Lord Mayor says one thing when he presents the budget to this place and then changes it significantly. Now, before they stand up and say, oh, she doesn't understand and things change and forecasts change, you know, sure, of course they do. But, you know, this council has to have a responsible financial management system. And simply saying from one year to the next we'll borrow $200 million extra or $300 million extra when they cannot manage the major projects is not good financial management. These aren't sensible savings the administration is making. These are desperate savings that they have to make to cover up the blowouts in the major projects and try and reduce. Imagine, the Lord Mayor likes to quote, you know, if the chaos of Labor and the Greens were to do this, rates would be this much higher. Imagine if another $400 million hadn't have been cut in November, how much more the Lord Mayor would have to borrow. It would probably exceed Council's actual borrowing facility, which I think is $500 million on the overdraft. So when the Lord Mayor stands up and says, oh, there's nothing to see here, there so is. They can't be trusted to manage this city's finances reliably. Now, it gets better. In 2025-26, next year, Council is actually forecasting that they'll spend or borrow $200 million. Just 2 years ago, Council said that would be $55 million. In 26-27, Council is borrowing only $50 million, they think, then 45, then 50. And in that furthest year out, 2028-29, that was supposed to be zero. So presumably post-2028, the Lord Mayor doesn't really care because he doesn't think he'll be here. But it just shows that this administration cannot be trusted. Their debt forecasts have been wrong and are changing not just a little bit, they are changing by hundreds of millions of dollars to fund their massive project blowouts and cost overruns and financial mismanagement. And that is not good enough and I don't support it.
Further speakers on item 1? Okay. So we will now put item 1A. Oh, sorry, Lord Mayor, did you want to respond?
Yeah, just briefly. Look, I won't be lectured about financial management by Councillor Johnston, because I remember when we had a critical decision to make in this council on the Legacy Way tunnel, Councillor Johnston wanted to go for a sole source arrangement with one particular company, which would have cost over $2 billion instead of the $1.5 billion Legacy Way ended up costing. I remember it well. And it is true. We all remember it. That anyone that was there at the time remembers it. But the other thing is, Councillor Cunningham made it really clear that by optimising when we borrow funds, we have saved significant money in interest. That's right. And Councillor Johnston clearly is not understanding what's going on here. This is about when in the financial year borrowings are made. And so if there's a particular amount that's scheduled to be borrowed in a financial year, you know, technically you could borrow it in the beginning of the financial year, you could borrow it in the middle, you could borrow it at the end. And the officers have optimised the borrowings. And by optimising the timing of the borrowings and delaying when borrowings are made, how much interest has been saved? $85 million over the term of the borrowing, and in fact $10 million this year, this current financial year alone. And so there's various methods being put in place to optimise our borrowings and to make sure we reduce our interest payments. But we always borrow money to build infrastructure. We don't do what they do up the road, which is borrow to hand out $1,000 cash payments to people where future generations then lumped with the electricity bills of today. We borrow only to build things. There's always been our position. And if there's a question about why the borrowings are at this point now, it's because we are building more than we have ever built before. And every dollar of borrowings has gone into a bricks and mortar asset that will live for a long time and benefit for a long time the people of Brisbane going forward. So these borrowings, as they always are each year, are approved by the state government. They're approved by the QTC. We go through a process to do that. And each year to this point, they have not only been approved, but they have been assessed by the Queensland Treasury Corporation, and we have continued to have a strong credit rating for 12 years in a row. And every one of those 12 years, Councillor Johnston has got up and talked about financial management and how it's all wrong and everything's being done wrong. Yet year in, year out, we are given a strong credit rating by the Queensland Treasury Corporation, not someone who is allied to us in any way. Well, okay, that's news to me. Apparently the Queensland Treasury Corporation is allied to us.
Councillor Johnston, I've already asked you not to call out. That's one caution.
So the Queensland Treasury Corporation is an entity of the state government, so I'm not sure how they can be allied to us. But yeah, I'd say the opposite is probably true. But they continue to assess our financials as strong, our financial management is strong, and they continue year after year to give this council a strong credit rating. So this debt policy will continue based on the projections that we have made, and as I said, there'll be changes in the timing, but overall, in the 10-year time frame, our borrowings will be less than projected in last year's budget, which is a good outcome. So I commend these items to the chamber.
We'll now put item 1, A, C, D, E, F, G, H and I to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. We'll now move to the vote for item 1B. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. No. The ayes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division has been called by Councillor Cassidy and seconded by Councillor Collier. Councillors, ayes to my right and noes to my left. Please ring the bells. Clerks, please read the results.
Madam Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 18 in favour and 7 against.
The motion is carried. Councillors, please resume your seat. Lord Mayor, item 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, please.
Okay, so item 2, or J, is the AP 200 Brisbane Housing Supply Incentive Policy. We've made our position on supporting new housing supply really clear. We've made this policy really clear. It was introduced last year, and it's all about bringing down the cost of building new homes. Now, there are some people that live in a fantasy land that think that developers are land banking and sitting on property and making record profits while they do so. Like we've just heard, the Greens councillor says they are. Well, look, I'm not sure if you're aware of the news in recent times, but so many home building companies have fallen over and shut down entirely. So many construction companies have folded. If they're making record profits, it doesn't appear so. by the number of business closures in the construction sector and particularly in the home building sector. This idea that they're somehow making record profits is a fantasy. It's a case of the Greens believing their own political propaganda. It is just not true. The reality is, if you are sitting on a parcel of land that has a development approval and you are not building, it's not because you're making record profits, it's because you cannot make it stack up. And to be clear, what this means is that the cost of building, if it's an apartment building, or if it's a home, or several homes, is higher than the cost you can actually sell them for on the private market. And that is a real thing. And it is stopping so many homes being built right now because construction costs are so high that they simply cannot build the apartments for a price that people are willing to pay or can afford to pay. And so taxing those people more is not the solution. The solution is to try and bring down the costs of building so that these projects can go ahead. We've heard that there are 9 years of apartment supply that's approved, and it's not because people are sitting on them making record profits. And the other thing I would say is if someone is sitting on a parcel of land and they're sitting on it for several years, do they have some kind of free ride there? They're paying council rates, they're paying state government land tax, they're paying bank interest in many cases. Every year they're going backwards. There are so many incentives right now to actually build, and if they're not being taken up, maybe there's a reason for that. And so let's not talk about green fantasy here. Let's talk about reality. The reality is we need to do our part to bring down the cost of building new homes. And this policy does exactly that. Under the policy, community housing providers are given a 100% discount on their infrastructure charges, and that's for all approvals granted after the 1st of January 2022. Additionally, those who meet the criteria but are not community housing providers will receive a discount of up to 75% for approvals granted between the 1st of January 2022 and the 31st of August 2023. And discounts of 50% apply for approvals given between the 1st of September 2023 and the 30th of June 2025. And so this structure is very clearly designed to incentivise community housing, 100% discount, and then next to incentivise people who have already existing approvals in place to actually build, and then obviously to incentivise, but less so, new applications that have come in as well. And so this is all about bringing down the cost of building, as I said, to bring on more supply. And it's a policy that is one part of our approach to introduce and boost housing supply. Item K is the Stores Board submission, which has already been flagged and talked about a number of times, which relates specifically to a couple of the projects underway at the moment. Number one, Brisbane Metro and a number of components of Brisbane Metro works, and number two, the Moggle Road corridor upgrade. Councillor Murphy advised in his presentation that the overall cost of Brisbane Metro will be $1.55 billion. And that is the case, including this submission. And effectively what is happening here is we're making an adjustment to the contingency so that the project can be effectively completed without any further submissions needing to come through. And it reflects, obviously, the pressures that the construction sector are under in every project at the moment. Now, we'll hear all types of moaning and groaning, no doubt, from those opposite, but they don't moan and groan about all the state government projects that have had much, much larger cost increases, some to the extent that they now cost more than the entire council budget, and I'm talking about Cross River Rail, but pretty much any state government project now is massively over budget. And you won't hear a peep out of the opposition about that, but when there's pressures on our projects, it's apparently only the responsibility of the LNP administration and it's only our doing, and they ignore every other bit of information that all major projects are under cost pressures. But we've heard this track before, we'll hear it again tonight, but the reality is this submission allows us to complete those two projects by making some adjustments to contingency. So if there are further cost pressures experienced before the end of the project, there will be adequate contingency to cover those cost pressures. Now, obviously our hope is that the projects can be delivered without using all of that contingency, but we must provide a responsible level of contingency to make sure the projects can be completed. So those two projects that I mentioned are covered in item K. Item L is a submission for our recycling services, and this is with Visy. As councillors would be aware, Visy has provided recycling services for this council for many, many years and is the preeminent provider of such services right across Australia and in fact globally. There are not a lot of competitors to this provider, although there are plans in the future for competitive operations to set up and arise. And so this contract is effectively a renewal of an existing arrangement, but it also reflects that there's been a number of changes when it comes to the waste industry and pressures on recycling since our previous contract was signed. And so the cost of dealing with our recycling has increased significantly as a result of this contract. We can't go to a competitor because there is no competitor that can take our recycling. So this is the situation we are in at the moment. Having said this, I am reliably informed that the deal that we have struck with Visy is a very competitive deal compared to the deal that they have struck with many other councils. And so we are aware in discussions with other councils of what is being charged to other councils. And because of the tough negotiating and because of our size and scale, we have been able to get the best deal possible in the current arrangement. But as I said, down the track, as we get competition in the marketplace, there will be opportunities to have, a more favourable outcome. One of the things that's happened, obviously, in recent years since the signing of the last contract was a change in the way that recycled materials are dealt with, and there's changes to ensure that recycled materials aren't sent offshore. I think that's a positive thing. We don't want our waste ending up in developing countries, and that is a good thing that it is processed here, but obviously that increases the cost as well, and that has compared to the time when we signed the last contract as well. And so our contract relates to largely what goes in the yellow top bin. Visy's operations are based here in Brisbane at Gibson Island in Murarrie. I've visited the plant on a number of occasions, and it is a world-class facility that continues to have investment in, and it's always good to see and prove with your own eyes to the, I guess, the question that a lot of people are asking out in the community: where does the yellow top bin recycling material go? Well, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's a wonderful facility, and the MRF that's out there does a great job of sorting all of the recycled materials and processing them and reusing them as well. And so this particular item I commend to the chamber. Item M is the...
Lord Mayor, your time has expired.
Move for an extension. Seconded.
It's been moved for an extension by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Dixon. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Lord Mayor.
Item M is the amendment to administrative arrangements. This one's very straightforward. It's relating to the City Planning and Sustainability Division, so there's a structural change. It's proposed that the branch, City Parklands and Strategy and Support, be merged into Natural Environment, Water and Sustainability, not abolished, merged. And
Councillor Johnston, that's your second warning. Stop calling out across the chamber while the Lord Mayor's speaking. Lord Mayor.
And that is the only significant change in this particular proposal. aside from some very minor wording changes. Item M is the delegation of powers, and City Legal has performed an annual review of the list of delegations and has made recommendations to make sure that they are correct and they reflect the current operating and decision-making needs of the Council. In total, there are 32 delegations being proposed, which includes 2 that are existing and are being amended. The delegations are derived mainly from the State Government Acts, but also the Natural Assets Local Law. Obviously, full council does not need to make decisions relating to the caravan parks and relocatable homes parks subordinate local law 2000. So these decisions have been delegated elsewhere. And this is something that comes through each year as delegations are amended and updated.
Further speakers, Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. Could I ask that item 3, 5 and 6 be taken seriatim for voting as a group, which would then leave 2 and 4. So 2, 4, then 3, 5, 6. 2 and 4 together, then 3, 5, 6 together. We'll be supporting item 2, the amendment, amending the Brisbane Housing Supply Incentive Policy. There was a lot of debate when this was first brought in, and what I said then stands for this debate now. We will be supporting it on balance. There are obviously concerns that we have within it. We're strongly in support of the incentives for community housing providers. In fact, we're strongly on record a long time before this LNP regime moved to supporting community housing providers in that space. We also, on balance at the moment, accept that this, the limited nature of this policy is acceptable to us in supporting private developers delivering housing that is more affordable in the market than we are currently seeing, and that construction is more affordable. I know these figures are a bit out of date now. Last time I spoke to the UDIA, as I've said in here, about 4 or 5 months ago, the cost to build a unit in Lutwyche, for instance, in an 8 or a 10 unit development was about $1 million in construction costs. So it's not, I agree in that point. It is not affordable to construct that missing middle of unit developments. It is at the moment for townhouses and standalone homes, so they're not going to rapidly fill the gap we need. So on balance, we do accept this, and the LNP will never get up and say, "Oh, good on Labor councillors for agreeing with them on these things," like we have on Stones Corner and like we.
Good on Labor councillors for agreeing.
Go on. And as I said in the budget speech, Chair.
Thank you.
As I said in the budget speech, things and said earlier today in program 4, things are rapidly changing in this space, and we are willing to work with the administration on these things. And I don't know why they're so shocked about that sometimes. We have different ideas from time to time, and that's what debates are about, in canvassing different ideas. But where there's something we will agree with, we will of course vote in favour of that. So on balance, we will be supporting that one today. I do find it interesting where the Lord Mayor earlier said that developers are losing money on, say if they had have owned a block of land that might be zoned for high-density residential. I don't think any developers lost any money over the last 9 years in holding that land. I suspect their capital gain would be enormous. Lord Mayor didn't mention that, but I do accept that construction costs are extremely high at the moment, and the kind of housing we need is not being delivered. The Stores Board, item 3, the Stores Board submission. The Lord Mayor spoke on this for 140 seconds. Give or take, I timed that bit. And half of that was talking about Cross River Rail. So about a minute or so, just over a minute, the Lord Mayor spent talking about this change to the significant contracting plan for the Moggill Road project and the Brisbane Metro. And so the Brisbane Metro in terms of its construction, but also in its operational readiness. And we know from what Councillor Murphy has said, and what the Lord Mayor has said over the last 2 days, the Council cannot open and operate the Brisbane Metro bus project by November this year or by June next year because this Council is so broke, Chair. That's what they say. They don't have the money to do it. They don't have the money to do it. So they're seeking to use the contract negotiations with TransLink and the state government at the moment around growth funding for more routes in the suburbs, seeking to get that money to pull that into the Metro operational budget, because this council is now so broke under this LNP regime that they can't operate 36 buses. And what the Lord Mayor said is this, according to him, this is an increase just in the contingency, so nothing to see here. This was like that Kingston Smith Drive project where they used 100% of the contingency, and apparently there was no problem, and said there was some. Well, they used all but 1 million of that contingency. So what we're seeing here is an admission then, because the Lord Mayor said this is contingency money, so not really part of the construction budget, but then says that Councillor Murphy's factored in 100% of this contingency in the final figure he released publicly yesterday at 1.55 billion for almost all of Metro bus line 1 and 2 to be complete. Now, they don't seem to talk about that extra 450 million to complete part of the city deal, and I get it's not all council money, but there is an extra station to be built. The Wollongabba station, which was costed some time ago at $450 million. So that takes that project to $2 billion now, the Metro Line 1 and 2. And Councillor Murphy got up here yesterday and claimed that $2 billion was farcical. Well, that's what it is. If you were to complete Metro Line 1 and 2, it's $2 billion to roll out 36 buses, to roll up and down the South East Busway into a new stop at Wollongabba and on the Inner Northern Busway on existing infrastructure. And now, after the budget's passed, after we had opportunities for scrutiny of this significant contracting plan through information sessions and in debate, because that wasn't included in the budget that was just passed by this LNP regime. So 2 hours ago they passed the budget, or thereabouts, and then 2 hours later they bring a major change to this contracting plan with, between various projects, hundreds of millions of dollars of increases, which is then going to flow into that first quarter review where we're going to be dipping further into cash reserves in council. There'll be further borrowings required over the next financial year. Not to invest at that point in infrastructure, as the Lord Mayor says, because that'll be done and dusted, but the rot set in. It'll be borrowing to keeping the lights on and borrowing to operate a bus system of 36 buses, which is now sitting entirely and totally separately to the TransLink network of suburban buses here in Brisbane. So the budget that was passed was farcical to start with, because there's clearly no intention of carrying out all of the commitments that are in this budget, because all of the details have been removed, all of the costings have been removed from it. But now we find out that it's all going to change anyway. It's all going to change anyway, because we know that there are now blowouts locked into the Moggle Road project and into the Metro project, not just to finish construction, but for a generation in terms of operational costs. So we certainly won't be supporting item 3 today. We will be supporting the contracting plan for recycling services. We accept that, as a great Labor initiative, recycling, yellow top recycling, thanks Jim Sawley. They talk about William Jolly, they talk about Sally Ann Atkinson throughout debate over the last 2 days, and then the Lord Mayor gets up and talks about recycling but won't mention that Lord Mayor's name. But that was transformative in the 1990s to introduce yellow top recycling. I remember there used to be that divider in the bin, and you used to put paper and cardboard on one side and cans and tin things on the other, and then that removed. And I remember as a student at school in the 1990s at primary school, that was something we were engaged about and learnt about, how sustainable Brisbane is and going forward, how important that is to reduce waste going into landfill. So a massive, massive change in the 1990s about our waste stream and removing recyclable materials from waste. What's happened since? Nothing new. Nothing new. In fact, it's gone backwards. It's gone backwards. And in terms of what's filling up our landfill, it's getting worse and worse and worse under this LNP regime because it's all about, for them, greenwashing. It's all about virtue signalling for the LNP, not about hard work. So we accept and we welcome the news that there will be some more competitive tenders available in the future, but we will support this one because recycling is too important not to. We won't be supporting item 5 and 6. I won't seek an extension and go any further than this 10 minutes, but my comments from this discussion we had 12 months ago on these items, on the increasing use of delegations for things that don't require delegations just because this LNP regime don't want scrutiny on them stands, and we don't support the level of delegation. Some need to be done, but not to the level of which this LNP administration is seeking.
Councillor Cassidy, your time has expired. Further speakers. Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I now rise to speak on item L, which is a significant contracting for the recyclable materials recovery service. Our administration has proudly overseen the recycling over 60,000 tonne of recyclable material extended through our recycling bin network. Managing our recycling network requires facilities capable of processing high volumes of recyclable materials that we handle here in Brisbane. As the current contract is set to expire at the end of this month, the item before us today is the arrangement for these services moving forward. As the Lord Mayor shared, Visy has a very long history of providing this service for council, and they remain the only facility in South East Queensland who has the capacity and capability to accept the amount of tonne Brisbane collects. Chair, our administration is committed to increasing our recycling rate, and whilst those on the other side of the chamber reminisce about Jim Sawley and the days of inventing recycling, we know that Jim was good at recycling paper bags, very good at doing that. Yeah, exactly right. But I can tell you this administration is focused on the Towards Zero Waste program that we have ahead for the next 4 years. So, and while we do encourage all of our residents to recycle, we also want to have industry partners who have the capacity and capability of using these recyclable materials. The Lord Mayor spoke about Gibson Island and the paper recycling that we have there. They also have a great program with the Containers for Change or deposit scheme. That's where the cans and bottles go from our recycling bins. They're two fantastic circular economy outcomes for our city. And as the contract does draw to the end, securing a reliable and efficient service provider is imperative for our continued recycling efforts. I do want to put on record my appreciation to the waste team for their efforts in negotiations, and as the Lord Mayor did share, this has been a good contract for our city, and we look forward to seeing the support of the chamber. Thank you.
Further speakers. Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. I rise to speak on items 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Firstly, I want to start with Council's housing supply incentive policy. If this policy has essentially two parts to it. One addresses a significant and real problem and may in fact be useful to the community, and that is providing a 100% discount on infrastructure charges to community housing providers. These are the providers who will build affordable and social housing for people in Brisbane who desperately need it. So that is a good initiative. The problem, however, is in what the LNP are also doing here, which is embedding developer welfare into this policy. And essentially, developers who build units in certain parts of the city will get up to a 50% discount on infrastructure charges. Now, there is no obligation for them to build affordable housing or social housing. They're just getting a straight-up discount from the Lord Mayor on infrastructure charges. Now, Again, yes. The big problem with this is the city needs infrastructure. We know the Lord Mayor can't build it. He's cut pretty much every kind of infrastructure you can think of, whether it's drainage or roads or whatever it might be. The Lord Mayor's unable to deliver infrastructure through council's other recurrent forms of income, and now he's cutting the contributions developers make to improving the infrastructure our cities needs. That means less infrastructure in areas where growth happens. The drainage is not upgraded, the road network's not upgraded, the parks aren't upgraded, the libraries aren't upgraded. So the impact of it is in parts of this city, the Lord Mayor is going to incentivise developers to jam more people in with less infrastructure to support them. Now, that is the wrong approach to this. And that is even made even more stark by the Lord Mayor saying earlier today that incentives that are being provided to developers aren't working now. So what's his solution? Let's just provide more incentives to developers. The Lord Mayor is in denial that there's land banking going on. There is. And the Lord Mayor's own council is approving the use of residential land for commercial purposes. They are, through material changes of use, allowing developers to take land zoned for residential development and convert it into commercial purposes. Now, this council's policy settings are all wrong. So this, unfortunately, is about a 50% good policy. The other 50% is just a mistake. It's just a mistake. And it really won't do anything other than jam more people into areas with less infrastructure. Yeah, I don't even know if the amounts are going to end up being enough for a developer to build. He's probably had private conversations with his mates at the Property Council about this, but, we've never seen any rationale to support this change, and none's provided in the council papers before us today. With respect to item 3, the significant contracting plan, It is astonishing that this council, straight after announcing the budget, has to come back seeking approvals to increase funding for its signature projects. Not just by a little bit, by a lot. And we have discussed tonight the Metro in quite some detail because it's a bad project and it is getting worse. We know that the contract that the Lord Mayor and Council have entered into for the Metro basically is, and I quote, a bespoke, complex contract arrangement. Bespoke. So apparently only Brisbane City Council can enter into this kind of arrangement. I mean, governments at state, at federal level, all around the world, they seem to enter into contracts, and yes, they blow out too. I'm not saying they don't. But councils' bespoke, complex contract arrangements, I suspect, have helped get council into this mess. It's also in this mess because of the failed business planning, business scoping and detail that was needed before this project actually started. We know that the changes in scope to this project have cost this council millions and millions of dollars, and that is simply bad management. And now we're seeing the outcome of that. We're seeing the outcome of that in that at some point in the next year, thank you to the Councillor for Marchant, the Metro is going to start. But it can only start, as the Lord Mayor has attempted to extort the state government, if the state government gives council money to run the council bus network. So the Lord Mayor has built a project, or not quite, he hasn't built it yet. He's built a project, but it's something he cannot actually run.
Yes, because there's no money.
There's no money. There's no money. I mean, it's one of those things where it should be an episode of Utopia all on its own. All on its own, because yes, we're going to keep throwing money at this. More, here's hundreds of millions more, hundreds of millions more. And oh my God, we can't actually run it. Uh-oh, what are we going to do? Oh, that big bad state government, they're going to have to do it. It's their fault that we haven't done it. Who does this? Who does this? I mean, if there is a problem and this bus you know, the arrangement with TransLink isn't agreed, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Maybe the Lord Mayor will give up his $100,000 a year in $100,000 a year in extra funding and give it to the bus drivers. I honestly have no idea how on earth council's got itself into this diabolical situation, from starting out, as Councillor Murphy so proudly decided to tell everybody yesterday, with a Paris-style underground rail service, to a few electronic buses that council can't afford to run.
Big electronic buses.
Moggill Road is even worse. Moggill Road is an absolute debacle. We're back less than a year later, again because of poor project scoping. Council just announces these projects and say, we're going to deliver them at any cost. That is not a sensible way to engage in building major contracts. Again, we're seeing that unknown risks at the time. In less than 9 months, apparently significant risks on the Moggill Road project have been identified. To be honest, I think the biggest risks to this council are the Lord Mayor and his LNP administration, because they seem to be unable to manage major projects. And this is not something that's just happened this year or last year. It's been building and building and building. And for all the new councillors who are here, in 2009, this council had no debt. Yes, the state government forced council to sell its water assets, but that money meant council was debt-free. Under this Lord Mayor and his leadership team, debt has skyrocketed $3.8 billion. And every single major project that they have touched has gone poorly. It's not good enough. With respect to item 4, the Visy contract, honestly, it's 8:30 at night. The meeting was delayed so the LNP could have drinks with their outgoing staff member. We are now debating one of the most significant services that Brisbane City Council provides, which is recycling. And this is when the LNP choose to do it. They could have done this weeks ago in the ordinary course of business, but didn't. Here are the questions I've got about our waste contract, because it's not in the 2 pages that we've got on this. 2 pages. It's appalling. What improvements are we making in the contract? What new materials are going to be recycled? What innovations are going to be delivered? There's nothing. It looks like we've just desperately clinging on to doing the same thing we've always done. And at a time when you're renegotiating a major contract, that is when to get productivity and innovation gains with a new provider. Council hasn't even done that, and we are going to be left ruining a 10-year contract that doesn't have the flexibility to manage the complex needs of recycling in this city. Finally, with respect to the administrative arrangements, yes, parkland management has been abolished. It's been folded into another part of council. Parks don't rate a mention in this Lord Mayor's strategy. And as I always say, there's no way I'll support these delegations. This Lord Mayor's lazy. He doesn't want to make decisions that this council should be making.
Further speakers. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask for Sarah for voting on item 2? Earlier today, I said developers should be paying their fair share. I said that also last year when this initially came to Chambers. And the truth is, community service providers can provide affordable housing. We've seen some good success stories in this space for community service providers. And again, had this just been about community service providers, it would have been a completely different policy. But it's not just about community service providers, it's about private developers. Private developers who are again and continuing to, I think from memory, this initially came into chambers in October last year. So where are we? Not within 9 months, have again received, you know, another handout, another cut. And the thing about that is, you know, we are talking about infrastructure charges here. We're talking about the deliveries for our communities that will make them thrive, that will make them healthier, more connected, not just to each other, but also to the rest of the city. You know, we're talking here about parks, drainage, sewerage, road intersection upgrades, which are downgrades. We're talking about all the bits and pieces that high density and growing communities need. And we know, and I've talked about this before, that there are pockets where density has already started, where the amenities for them are not keeping up. And so when we talk about these developer tax cuts, and today we had this conversation, it's like, you know, there's a lot of denial going on with the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor again spent a lot of time talking about the Greens. The Lord Mayor spent a lot of time saying how, you know, if they were making record profits, you know, how could the Greens believe that? Well, we never said we think they're making record profits. What the Greens have been saying is that developers do land bank. Developers themselves land bank. A couple of weeks ago, I was using some quotes that developers said about land banking. The Deputy Mayor, through you, Chair, stood up and said that's not appropriate for this program, but maybe it is here. As I stated, an example of a well-known developer in Brisbane has publicly said, we only build one development at a time to ensure maximum price. Another private developer has said, if you understand your competitors and they haven't got much land left, you'll reduce your supply and wait for them to finish and jack up your price. Another one said, well, people in property development have said that land banking reflects good business practice, right? And the reason why this is good business practice is, of course, developers are businesses. Yes, the Lord Mayor has acknowledged this. We all acknowledge that a developer is a business. And when a business like a property developer knows that it can keep its stock, it's not going to build. It knows that zoning could change, which would increase the price of the land that it's on. And let me be clear, if developers were in such pain, right, were making so many losses, well, where's the rapid sale of land right now? Where is it? Do we see all these developers in crippling pain selling heaps of land right now at low prices? No, we're not seeing that. We're just seeing land that have DAs approved on the sit undeveloped, never built. Developers are often better off financially to drip feed supply and maintain high prices and higher margins. That's business. That's business because they are a business. If we're going to use traditional economics, supply and demand, you limit supply, you get higher prices. That's neoliberal economic, neoclassical economics. So of course, sites are being banked. And of course, where sites are being banked, where they're withdrawn from the market, what that also means is that developers that could be ready to build aren't able to build on them. And this fantasy land to say, and am I saying that all developers are land banking? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it does exist. And for the Lord Mayor to come up here and suggest that we're saying property developers are making record prices, we didn't say that. We We didn't say these businesses are making records. We're saying that they're land banking. And to come here and say that, and again give cuts to them, give handouts to them, give developers more when there are no guarantees they're going to build. And we've seen that they're not building, even with the handouts that the LNP administration and the Lord Mayor have been giving, that they're not building. And we've seen it historically. The land prices are going to go up. They can build it another time. And so had this policy just been about community service providers, it would have been a completely different policies, and that could have actually helped us in what is, and I repeat, the worst housing crisis in history since the Depression. On item 3, I'll speak on item 3 briefly. Look, when I spoke now, maybe, gosh, before the break, so now a long time, longer than expected, before on the overall budget, I said we've got no money and we can't trust whatever is in the budget book. And here we are, mere hours later, making significant changes, amendments to significant contracting plans for multiple projects, but particularly the Metro and particularly Mogul Road. And that's what I mean by we couldn't trust the budget. And this is hours later. God knows what will happen in the next 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. These are significant changes that could have been in the budget, but they're not. Instead, they're here in this meeting. And you know, like I've said previously, I actually had I think it was a 45-hour meeting with Minister Mellish, and we talked about various things. And one of the things that we talked about was actually the Metro and the contract with state government. And a couple of people on this side are point on. You know, we can't run the Metro because we have no money. You know, any future deal that's supposed to increase network service in our city shouldn't be, and let me be clear about my words, shouldn't be a part of a deal that just offsets the black hole of the Metro. I think that's the main concern, I'm paraphrasing here, of the state government, that any future deal doesn't just pull Brisbane City Council out of the mess that it's gotten itself into with the Metro. And it's a shame that it's like this. It's a real shame that it's like this, because we shouldn't be having this discussion now. This should have been out in the open. Obviously, Mogul Road, the estimates keep spiralling upwards and upwards and upwards. It's doubled. It's more than doubled, I believe. And so here we are. So I stand by what I said a couple of hours ago. We can't trust anything in the budget, and we've got no money, and we're in deep trouble.
Further speakers? Councillor
Thanks,
Lyons.
Madam Chair. I'm just taking a moment now to reflect upon item number 3 in our agenda today, and that is, of course, the significant contracting plan alterations in reflection of a need to lift the contingency to better accommodate what has been a very difficult economic environment, particularly for major infrastructure projects. We've heard it before, but I'll say it again. Over the past 3 years, the cost of fuel is up 44%, concrete is up 42%, steel is up 36%, electricity is up 22%, and the cost of road and bridge construction generally is up 22%. This is in an environment where we see significant growth, particularly in the industry, with demand for labour in particular to deliver construction projects of this nature. The increased demand, therefore the increase in prices for the skilled labour required is expected to continue to increase, with new 2023 estimates projecting a peak that will hopefully conclude in financial year 27-28. the supply side of labour and training has not yet responded appropriately to this sharp increase in demand, and there's expected to be a 78% surge in labour requirements across Queensland, which will significantly affect the price of major infrastructure projects throughout Brisbane and the entire state from 2024 through 2028, with about 70% of the existing labour demand in these areas where the workforce challenges already exist significantly exacerbated. The construction and building industry has seen an increasing surge since pre-COVID levels and are having impacts upon a whole range of businesses. We see the effects here. We see the effects. Thankfully, it has stopped, but there was a period where the news would report that mum and dad builders would fail almost weekly. That's a reflection of the increased input costs and the increased pressure on particularly on the construction industry. And we, at our core, particularly infrastructure, is a construction industry exposed area of this council. So, one of the things that I wanted to take a moment to discuss as well, that we often don't go into this level of detail in this meeting, but I thought it was important to reflect upon the fact that when you do a project like the Moggill Road, the Indooroopilly roundabout removal and the Moggill Road corridor upgrade, there are a number of elements to the project where we must engage a subcontractor. That contractor has a monopoly in the industry. They set a price, and if they don't like what's going on, they increase the price, and you've got no say in it. Now, famous and best examples: Urban Utilities, Telstra, NBN Co. So let me take a moment to reflect upon some increases over the last 12 months from those entities that we must deal with. Both they are price setters, they are monopolies, and work cannot proceed without their cooperation. NBN, we work to their time frame. So can I assure all councillors and you, Madam Chair, that NBN is no better to us than they are to residences when they deal with their timeliness. The increased cost just for NBN, $500,000. Negotiations with Telstra as a result of the required telecommunication improvements through the Moggill Road corridor, and increased costs. This is not the whole cost, this is what Telstra, the monopoly in the market, have made us pay, or else they would not proceed with our work. $9 million. APA Gas, $1.8 million increase, and Energex, $1.2 million on top of the already agreed amounts. Just those increases from dealing with monopolies have to be reflected in our work as well. So we know that this is a significant project in an older part of the city. We've had instances where drains weren't where they were supposed to be in the plans. We've had effectively all underground services have had to be upgraded. But I know that it is an important project. I appreciate the consideration of this council in the capacity to lift up the capacity to use contingencies in this project in case price risk for both labour, inputs and dealing with monopolies goes up in the near future. I hope it doesn't, but I think it's important to reflect that it may. Now, I also know that this is a key project in the western suburbs. The Indooroopilly roundabout, as we often discuss, something like 19 collisions requiring hospitalisation between the years 2013 to 2018, from memory. That I might be required to tidy that up, but regular and routine collisions, regular and routine hospitalisations, traffic lights on a roundabout, lanes coming and going on a roundabout. This new project will make that area significantly safer. I know that the residents of Pullenvale Ward will materially benefit from this project. I know that the residents of of Walter Taylor Ward will materially benefit from this project. And I said it at the end of last term, the council at Johnston would be returned, largely thanks to my work on the Moggle Road roundabout. Her margin's up, she brags about it, but the truth is it's all mine. It is all mine. And I know, and look, and I know, one must only reflect that her vote in Chelmer, Graceville and Sherwood, 25% of that, that's work that I earned for her. And, you know, it's times like this where I enjoy basking in the gratitude of Councillor Johnston, which she always sort of likes to wheel out. But even despite her constant and pointless criticism, we will look after the people of Sherwood, Graceville and Chelmer as well, delivering a significant improvement to their travel time, an improvement to their public transport system and their way of life, regardless of her criticism.
Further speakers? No further speakers? Lord Mayor, right of reply.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Lord Mayor. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to speak on all items, and firstly, I just wanted to congratulate Councillor Cassidy and the Labor team for their position on housing, on the housing incentive policy. This is a fresh change for them, and clearly, this is a point of difference between them and the Greens that is starting to emerge. It's getting a little bit crowded over there in the policy space for a while, Madam Chair. So glad to see that some divisions are emerging, and hopefully we'll see more and more different policy positions taken from the Labor Party and the Greens. Madam Chair, firstly, just on the Stores Board submission, the amendment to the significant contracting plan and the sole source submission, this does bring, as I mentioned earlier in the information sessions and in the Program 1 budget debate yesterday, this brings Metro's maximum anticipated budget to $1.55 billion. It does provide additional contingency, so we may not use all of the money that has been allocated under this SCP. In fact, I very much hope that we can meet that original budget that Graham Quirk first outlined all the way back in 2016 and land right in there at $1.54 billion. Wouldn't that be a feat, councillors, if we could do that after 8 years of this project to match the budget, you know, right bang on, with all of the challenges that we've experienced, all of the supply chain issues, all of the BPIC and union issues that we've had to deal with. That would be amazing. And you know what I think that would mean, Madam Chair? I think it means we would add another award to our cabinet, because we've already got 7 awards that Brisbane Metro has won now, from IAP2, you know, from local government managers, from the International Union of Public Transport. So we haven't even carried a single passenger, Madam Chair, but we've won 7 awards. So, but we don't get any plaudits for that from the opposition or the Greens or the independent councillors. A remarkable achievement, actually. I went and had a look at how many awards Cross River Rail has won in the same period. I think they've won an award for the most tragic public transport project in the country for all of the changes that the Coordinator General has had to make it work, and all of the cost blowouts that they are experiencing. And we know as well, Madam Chair, that the Queensland Train Manufacturing Program blew out by, I think, what was it, a whopping $3.6 billion? Just a little bit, but Mark Bailey did put it on the website, which is the most open and transparent way to explain to people a cost increase. Anyway, I digress. Now, Councillor Cassidy said that we're broke, and that's why we're going to the state, you know, cap in hand, to renegotiate the transport contract. Actually, no, Councillor Cassidy. We're going to the state to renegotiate our transport contract because they put that in the deed of approval we got for Brisbane Metro. It actually says to start Brisbane Metro, we need to renegotiate the transport contract with them. So that was a requirement that they placed on us, not a requirement that we placed on them. The second point I would make, Councillor Cassidy, is that you're elected to this place as a Brisbane City Councillor, not a Labor City Councillor, and it is in the city's best interests to have growth funding for bus services. And under your Labor state colleagues, Brisbane has been start of growth bus services for over 15 years, easily over a decade, but more like 15 years. That means that there are suburbs that have grown from, just like in Councillor Kim's ward, they were, farm sites 15 years ago. Now they're bristling with housing and they have no new bus services. And in Brisbane, buses do 2/3 of all public transport, not rail. And yet, Councillor Cassidy says we're obsessed. No, the state has been obsessed with Cross River Rail and just throwing billions of dollars into that black hole, while there's a perfectly good bus network with a great project, Brisbane Metro, that is augmenting that and making sure that we have the capacity to grow into the future. And they have effectively left that to wither on the vine. And so services haven't changed in this city in 10 to 15 years, and the state is to blame. And we will be telling Brisbane residents about that, absolutely. We've made that very clear. Lord Mayor's made that very clear. If we cannot strike an agreement with the state that provides that growth funding for our city, not for us, not for the LNP Council, not for the Brisbane City Council, but for the 1.2 million residents of Brisbane that rely on this public transport to be improved. Every other city in this country has had better public transport in the last 10 years. Better bus services, new bus services, high frequency services. Brisbane is a city frozen in time, and we are seeking to address that through our contract renegotiations. In fact, Brisbane today has 82,000 fewer bus trips than it had 10 years ago. So actually we're going backwards. It's not even frozen in time. I actually gave them too much of a compliment, but it's even worse than that, Madam Chair, and that is no way for us to conduct ourselves. Councillor Cassidy also mentioned the Brisbane Metro Gabba Station. Well, Councillor Cassidy, the Metro Gabba Station, I don't know if you recall why the state wanted to have a metro station at Wollongabba. Does anyone guess why they might have wanted to have a station? Oh, Lord Mayor. Yes, that's right. There was going to be an Olympic stadium at the Gabba, and so there was a strong desire to connect in the Gabba Cross River Rail Station with a spur of the Brisbane Metro line extending off the South East Busway into that current busway configuration that is there, that will be redeveloped potentially as part of the Gabba redevelopment. Then the state well, I can't say what I want to say, what they did in terms of the venue plan, but let's say they botched it, and so now it's at QSAC. This is a state-led city deal project, Councillor Cassidy, and we have no idea where they're leading this project at the moment. So I would absolutely not say that any of that money is part of our project. It's not part of Brisbane Metro. It's never been on our Metro balance sheet. It's there. If they want to do some improvements at the Gabba, there's an open offer there of part funding to that, but it certainly is not part of Brisbane Metro anymore. Maybe when there was a Gabba stadium, fair enough to say, but absolutely not anymore. We also had, Councillor Cassidy say it's $1.5 billion for just 36 buses, and I think that's a real shame and an insult to the thousands of workers that are working on this project at over 10 work sites across the city that have rejuvenated and upgraded stations at the Cultural Centre station at UQ Lakes, at Griffith, at Buranda, here in Adelaide Street, the tunnel underneath the tunnellers, as well as the surface treatment that changes every day outside City Hall. It's clearly more than just 36 buses. And in fact, just the other day, Councillor Collier, when I did say they were buses, Councillor Collier interjected and said they weren't buses. So I don't know if the Labor team is even aligned on what the Metro is, but it is buses, but they're very good buses, Madam Chair. So now, Councillor Johnson said that this Metro was a bad contract and getting worse. I absolutely refute that. Metro has been a great contract and I would say skillfully managed by the project director, Stephen Hammer. We have had exactly the type of contracts that we've needed in exactly the type of procurement scenario we've required. Where we've needed pain share, gain share, we've done that. Where we've needed hard dollar contracts, we've done that. Where we've needed open cost plus arrangements, we've done that. And that's why we've won 7 awards, Madam Chair. So Metro's about to go platinum if we can hit that 1.54 budget, I can absolutely tell you that. She said we were extorting the state. Absolutely not true, but we are going in for our fair share after being starved of growth funding for over 10 years and almost certainly 15 years. So, and we don't, we make no apologies for that, we won't. She also called them electronic buses, which I found very entertaining. Now, Councillor Massey continued her hatred of developers here. We remind Councillor Massey, Madam Chair, that private developers deliver 98% of housing in this city. So if you want to rely on 2% of the community housing market to build the housing for the rest of us, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And, we talk to community housing providers, and Councillor Allen talks to community housing providers a lot, Councillor Massey, and, they've got approved DAs too, and they can't start because of the market conditions at the moment. So, nothing to do with us, to do with the market and the environment that has been created, many of which we are all dealing with in this sector. The final thing I will say about Councillor Massey's contribution, Madam Chair, is she said she had a meeting with Minister Mellish. What were the outcomes from that meeting? Come in here and talk to me about her meeting with Minister Mellish and to ask me to do some things that he said. There seems to be no outcome, and I remind councillors in this room, this is what happens when you elect Greens. You don't get outcomes, you get meetings.
Your time has expired. Any further speakers? Councillor Strunk.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak and reflect on what Councillor Wine said in regards to the increases in cost of the Muggle Road roundabout or upgrade. And he mentioned that NBN and Energex and Telstra or whoever, they are a monopoly, and there's nothing that we can do about that monopoly. We just have to cop the increases that they want to lay upon us, probably because they probably had some reasonable trying to think of the word. It's late. A reasonable reason, if I can put it that way, of wanting to increase it. And yes, they are monopolies, and yes, we do have to deal with them. But, you left out one of the biggest monopolies that have skin in the games in that roundabout project. And which one is it? Which one is it? If I can, through you, Chair, if I can put it out there, who has the biggest monopoly in Southeast Queensland? The Brisbane City Council. We are a monopoly. If you're a ratepayer, unless you move, right, you've got to cop all the rate increases. And what can you do about it? Nothing. You've got to cop all the charges and fees going up, and they were 10% this year, and you can't do anything about it. So before you start slanging off at some of the other monopolies, you should look at yourself as a member of the administration and realize that you are part of a monopoly. That's all I have to say, Chair.
Any further speakers? Any further speakers? No? Lord Mayor, right of reply.
Thank you to all councillors who contributed. Now, starting with the last comment there, I like that one. But councillors, residents do have the choice to move to other areas and pay more. Because that is the only choice. You move anywhere else in Southeast Queensland, you pay more in rates. And so they do have that choice. And guess what? They're choosing to move here.
That's right, from everywhere.
Because we have the lowest residential rates in Southeast Queensland. And I just wanted to also comment on particularly the Greens' contribution, Councillor Massey's contribution on development. And we heard a correction that she doesn't believe that developers are making record profits. I swear that I heard that said. Did anyone else hear that developers are making record profits? I don't know. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to have to go back and check the transcript, but that's what I thought I heard. But okay, I will. But definitely, this idea that the Greens are going to make developers pay more. How much credibility does that line actually have? Do developers actually pay more? Or is it actually the people that buy the properties who pay more, i.e. the buyers and the renters? So the Greens' policy is to make buyers and renters pay more. They say it's making developers pay more, but it's actually buyers and renters who pay more. That's the reality. And look, I saw an article in the Sydney Morning Herald on this issue just recently. It was an opinion piece written by Emma Dawson. And the headline is, "The Greens housing plan won't fix anything. It's a campaign tactic." And then Emma Dawson goes on to say, "The Greens plan, outlined by housing spokesman Max Chandler-Mather at the National Press Conference, was bold on vision, big on rhetoric, and entirely wrong on policy. It would in fact make the housing crisis in Australia worse." Now, who is Emma Dawson? Is she a developer? Is she a representative of the Property Council? No. Emma Dawson.
One moment, please, Lord Mayor. Councillor Massey, I caution you to stop calling out. Lord Mayor.
Emma Dawson is not from the Property Council. She's not from the development industry. She is not from the Liberal Party or the LNP. Emma Dawson is the Executive Director at a progressive Australian think tank, and she was a senior policy advisor in the Rudd and Gillard governments. So a massive lefty is saying that the Greens' housing policy will not work and in fact make the housing crisis work. This is stating the obvious fact that we all know. Everyone knows it, except for the Greens and the people, sadly, that they managed to con with their dishonest campaigns. And so we know that making developers pay more, as they say, is just code for making home buyers and renters pay more, because that's who actually pays in the end. That is not the outcome we want to see. We want to bring down the cost of housing. This policy coming through, the incentive policy, helps to do that. And in fact, it's great to see just in recent weeks, the state Labor government actually doubled down on our approach and has introduced the same approach. And in fact, not only are we seeing infrastructure charges reduced to help bring down the cost, state government is offering to pay developers infrastructure charges as well. And so there is agreement here that the right thing to do is to bring down the cost of building, not to make buyers and renters pay more. So this policy will do this. But I just wanted to address one other issue, and this was, I think, raised by Councillor Johnston about, well, we need more infrastructure. And yes, we always need more infrastructure. But the nuanced approach in this policy is that infrastructure charges are only reduced in areas that have good infrastructure. So this policy doesn't just reduce infrastructure charges everywhere in Brisbane, it reduces them in areas that have good infrastructure. So areas that have good access to public transport and facilities, good active travel opportunities. It reduces the infrastructure charges in those areas and those areas only. Whereas if you look at places like Rochdale or Pollara, where new infrastructure is required in greenfield areas, we are not reducing the infrastructure charges. Why? Because the infrastructure charges are needed in those areas desperately to provide new infrastructure. And so this is a nuanced approach which responds by reducing the charges in the areas that have good infrastructure, but not in the areas that don't. And so it's a really important point to make. And one final thing I just wanted to say about Metro. The idea that somehow, we can't afford this project, we can't afford to operate it, we're trying to extort the state government, as has been claimed. Well, there's only one extortion going in one direction, and that is the Brisbane City Council was extorted by the state government with no funding in growth for a decade, and all of the burden went onto the Brisbane City Council, extortion. And secondly, when the Metro deal, we were forced to sign it at gunpoint, basically, by Mark Bailey, or knife blade, whatever analogy you want to use. They said, yeah, we'll approve the Metro, but you can pay for everything and we'll take all of the fare revenue and pocket it. So not even a reasonable approach to say, if you're going to pay for the metro, then the fare revenue should go back into the system. No. They said, we're going to pocket all of the revenue. And guess how much revenue that is over a decade? $842 million. That is extortion. So if you want to talk about extortion, that is extortion. And look, I know that Councillor Cassidy gets excited about the 50 cents. It will only last 6 months. We know it will only last 6 months because Labor wants to buy their way through the next election, and then they'll say, oh, look, our priorities have changed. The 50-cent fares, it was good at the time, the money's dried up. And
they even get a choice to say that. Councillors.
Look, I think there's a chance that Labor will win. I think there is a chance. And so, yeah, we shouldn't underestimate that. But, yeah, look, it's anyone's guess. It's anyone's guess, really. I mean, look, we may even be having nuclear-powered metros in the future. I don't know. Anyway,
all right,
I'm getting distracted. So I think we're done.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
So finally, once again, I just want to thank all of the officers, the clerks, for their patience and for a very long couple of days, and everyone that's been involved in the background in making this budget possible, in making the democratic debate possible over the last couple of days. Yeah, I commend these items to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and councillors, for your contributions. We will now vote on item 2, attachment J. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, no. No. The ayes have it.
Division.
Division has been called by Councillor Massey and seconded by Councillor Chongwa. Councillors, ayes to my right and noes to my left. Please ring the bells. Clerks, please read the results.
Madam Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 22 in favour, 2 against and 1 abstention.
The motion is carried. Councillors, please resume your seats. We'll now put item 3, 5 and 6, attachments K, M and N, to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. No. The ayes have it. Division has been called by Councillor Strunk, was it? Oh, sorry, Councillor Murphy, and seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Councillors, ayes to my right and noes to my left. Please ring the bells. Clerks, please read the results.
Madam Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 18 in favour and 7 against.
The motion is carried. Councillors, please resume your seats. I now put item 4, attachment L, to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Motion is carried. I'll now... Sorry, yeah. As that concludes the business of the special meeting, I declare the meeting closed.